before I made my leap into building Talon and Quill, I had actually reached out to a few authors who I felt mirrored some of my writership, some of my, I would say, genre capabilities, what have you. And many of them said, hey, your experience with literary agents is actually unique and you should just keep trying. And to be honest, I sat with that a little while, and what I think is that I was asking people for whom the standard process worked, not people who were sort of consistently rejected. And I'm not saying that I could or could not have eventually gotten there, or that the advice was not good advice. I think it absolutely works for a certain set of people. I just think that I was either impatient, which may be a personal failing, and I was also discouraged. And furthermore, I didn't believe that after all of that sort of querying and understanding the new world order that is sort of publishing, that I really wanted to be a part of that ecosystem. I wanted to separate myself from it while still sort of adhering to or garnering this physical output. And I think it's kind of important to acknowledge that while that sort of persistence, what have you, does work for a number of people, it may not work for everyone. And I'm hoping that this sort of avenue that I took either is something that I can document here so that I can do it for the next round of books that I write, or that somebody else can sort of look at my story, look at sort of my path, and hopefully garner a way through in the same way that I was able to. I do believe that impatience isn't necessarily immaturity. I think impatience can be foreseen as information or as sort of action. And I think that maybe some people who take action might sort of find merit in this. But with no further information, let us discuss the next thing. I did initially reach out to the World Wide Web and ask for information about self-publishing in order to sort of educate myself on this entire ecosystem of, rights and trademarking and printing and even gutters, things like that. This nomenclature that is so deeply embedded in what it is to make a book, that there are firms that hire significantly large quantities of people to provide this single output. And so in my sort of worldwide research, I turned to what I think a lot of people turn to, which is Reddit. And Reddit has a sub which is called Self-Publish. And in my sort of initial parsing of our Self-Publish, and let's get there. One moment, please. I found chaos. Not intentional chaos. I found value, but I also found chaos. And I think the downside of what Reddit provides here is that it is, for each and every single post, there's a contradiction. Someone saying, that doesn't work, or yes, that did work for me, I'm surprised that didn't work for you, or things like that. And I think that that's still going to be true no matter who you are, because these are deeply personal and they are meant to be deeply personal. Unless you write otherwise, in which case, more power to you. But in my mind, I think that it helped to some extent, but it wasn't sufficient. It wasn't clear. It wasn't... the path was not aptly written. And I know that that's sort of maybe just my lack of research or my lack of sort of hitting the right notes here, but in my mind, this was overwhelming. This was walking into a store that is, 10 floors high and just like clothes strewn left and right, and that was just, it was too much for me. So I sort of took a step back, and I essentially think that sort of what you can see here to some extent is some of the value, which is terminology, cost, visibility, things like that. But I do think that it is overwhelming, and there is no universal step by step. So this can be, again, discouraging. Probably the name of the game when you talk about what self-publishing is. But I think that this is a systemic issue and not necessarily a personal one. And essentially everyone's speaking from inside their own sort of ecosystem. So this is too many inputs sometimes, at least for me or someone like me, maybe. But that was my sort of first few sort of steps into how do I start this business. And I'll sort of get further and tell you sort of this is a resource and you should make use of it. But my intention is to sort of write my step by step, and hopefully that'll give you maybe not a universal one, but sort of a guidebook that could help you in your further step or your further path or what have you when you're sort of in the same sort of in the trenches of what do I do, where do I start, where do I go from what starts as a Google Doc into this finished product, because it is not easy and there's a lot to learn, a lot to know, a lot of work involved, and to some extent, the administration is significantly, surprisingly, the bulk of the boo, So there's that. I hope that you've learned a little bit, but moving forward, I intend to teach more, so we'll see.